make sure it's top messages. No, all messages. All messages. It wasn't working that one time. Okay. I don't know if there's a time difference. Should I move this? I'm gonna move it. Hello. We are gonna start in just a second. Oh my gosh, my stuff is all over the place. I did not have school today because there's a huge snowstorm. So that's great. Okay. I'm good. How are you? I usually wait like 2 minutes. I just want to wait let a few more people, if anybody else joins, if they can. But yeah, I didn't have school today, and I was going to do it at 8:30. Hi, I was gonna do the live at 8:30 tonight because I know that's what it says on my schedule. But sorry, I have not been doing the lives on the times I'm supposed to, just because I haven't been on school the past few days because we have a huge snowstorm right now, so we haven't been able to go to school or anything. So it's just honestly been crazy. So, and I'm praying the rosary with my family tonight, so I just thought I'd do this now just in case something comes up and I can't do it later because I like to try and stay kind of consistent. But yeah, okay. I don't know, was there snow where you guys live? I know some people on here live in England. So I know some of my friends on here live in England and I'm like, wow. So I don't know if wherever you guys are have a lot of snow, but oh yeah, we're gonna start at 6:02. It's not snow, but the ice. Yeah, the ice is really bad, especially black ice. I went to get my mail today, and it's like all the way across the cul-de-sac, and I literally almost slipped and fell. It was so embarrassing. Okay. New Zealand. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what the weather's like in New Zealand, but that is crazy. Okay, so we're reading chapters, what did I say? 11 through Ships and Sharks. That's not there. 11 through 13. I forget what happens in this. Well, I guess we'll find out. I can't have it always memorized, I guess. Okay. Missouri had a lot of students go back today. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. I also have a friend who lives in Missouri, so. Okay. This is chapter 11, A Crow for the Carriage. So, wait. Oh my gosh. Last we left off, in case some of you weren't here for the live, last we left off the Sea Dragon song, and yeah, so right then, Janner was about to say that they should find Poto, and Slarb spun Janner around and he had a bleeding face. So, all right, on that note, the Iggy children stood frozen. 4 more fangs surrounded them with swords drawn. Try to run if you like, Slarb said with a smile that exposed his long, sharp teeth. It's a long way down to the sea. I'm sure those ghastly dragons would love a few plump victuals after their silly show, don't you think? 2 of the fangs seized Tink and Lily. In a deep, gravelly voice, one of them said, "What do you want? I don't know how to read. What do you want we should do with him, Slarb? Toss him over or put him in the pen? He needs to work on his grammar." Slarb considered the first option for a moment. His purplish forked tongue flicked over his fangs as his cold eyes went from the children to the cliffs a few feet away. Janner looked over Slarb's shoulder at the dissipating crowd, praying that Poto and his mother would spot them wherever they were, but not one of the people in the crowd was looking their way, and as far as he could tell, none of them was Poto or Nia. Janner was furious that he had allowed himself to be distracted from finding him. They probably would have been better hidden in the crowd anyways. Commander Norm told me to bring him in, but this cliff is so close, and these humans are so smelly, eh, Brack? His tongue flitted a few inches from Janner's face. There was no way out. 1 fang would be hard to escape from. 5 would be impossible. It was best to stay calm and hope Slarb followed orders. Being thrown in jail and then being sent away in the black carriage was horrifying, but it was better than being tossed into the sea right then and there. Janner noticed that Nugget was long gone. So much for the loyal dog, he thought, just as Slarb's fist slammed into the side of his head, knocking him to the ground. It was the first he'd ever been hit so hard. He'd had his share of fights with Tink, but they were nothing to the explosion of pain he felt while he moaned and struggled to his feet. Oh yeah, Nag would not be happy. Pretty sure Slarb would probably get killed if that happened. Slarb snorted. Let that be a lesson, boy. Touch me again and I'll eat you alive. He stepped over to Lily, grabbed a fistful of her wavy blonde hair, and jerked her head back. And the same goes for you, you stenchy little girl, he said. And he pushed her to the ground beside Janner. This is a lot more violent than season 1. I forgot, like, this is a lot different. Like, none of this happens in the show, so I was like, I forgot about that. Tink wrenched free from the Fang who was holding him and swung a fist at Slarb, but Slarb brushed the punch aside and rammed his knee into Tink's stomach. Tink doubled over and collapsed, gasping for air. Slarb bent over him and drew his knife. With one greenish-scaled hand, he held Tink's head flat against the ground while he ran the point of the blade softly below Tink's cheek. And you scrawny little thing, he growled. Remember Slarb with this. He flipped the dagger in the air, caught it by the blade, and cracked Tink in the head with the pommel. When did this happen? I don't remember this. Oh my goodness. Janner and Lily cringed at the sound it made as Tink cried out and then clenched his teeth and fought back tears as a little patch of blood emerged from his hairline. At the sight of the blood, the fangs became agitated, hissing and snorting like dinner had just been served. Bring them with me, Slarb said, turning away. But it worked up. The brothers were yanked to their feet and shoved forward. Lily tried to stand, but her poor twisted leg buckled beneath her and she crumpled to the ground. Janner bent to help her up, but the fang named Brack stepped between them with a growl. I'd let the little stinker alone if I was you, he said. She can't walk without help, Janner said hotly, and Brack bared his fangs at him. Let the boy help his little crippled sister, you fool, unless you want to carry the smelly thing all the way back to the jail. Slarb hissed. Oh, hi. Brack's nose twitched and his scaly lips curled with disgust while he regarded Lily. He relented and Janner helped her up again. The side of Janner's face was pounding from the blow, and above Tink's ear an egg-sized knot was growing. Lily cried as she limped along, looking around for a nugget. By now, most of the tourists had made their way either to the only inn or for dinner or to their camp at the opposite edge of town to cook something they'd bought at the market that day. A few people were milling around the lamp-lit streets. I know, right? Like, he cannot be talking. But when they saw the procession of 5 armored fangs carrying torches and prodding the 3 frightened children along, they averted their eyes and shuffled out of the way. Cowards, bro. Commander Norm was a fat, scaly thing with sagging eyes and yellow, crooked fangs. He lazed on the front porch of the jail almost all the time, sharpening a dagger and eating whatever happened to be on hand. Janner's mind was racing. They had gotten themselves into a hayload of a mess. Commander Norm's decisions were as swift as they were ruthless, and for all he knew they would find themselves in the black carriage on their way to Fort Lamdern before the sun rose. They were shoved up the few steps into the jailhouse stoop where Commander Norm was leaning back in a chair, sharpening his dagger in the shadows. Well, get him inside, he said without looking up. Yeah, it's like the opposite for them, I think. They were marched into a lamp-lit room and past a desk littered with fish bones. On the wall facing the desk, a crude circular target had been painted, and a score of daggers was jutting out of the wall. Whoever had thrown them was disturbingly accurate. Slarb pushed the children into another room that was dark as a grave. The light of Slarb's torch revealed 3 barred cells, the floor strewn with hay and filth. He lifted a ring of keys from the wall, opened the barred door, and shoved the children inside. With a look of great satisfaction, he locked the door, replaced the keys, and left. Me too. Tink and Lily curled up next to Janner on the floor as if it were cold, though it was quite stuffy. Let me see, Tink, Janner said, taking his brother's head in his hands. He parted Tink's hair and squinted in the darkness at the lump, though he had no idea what he was looking for. It doesn't seem too bad, he said, trying to sound much older than he was. How's that face of yours, Tink said. It'll be fine, Janner said, wincing as he touched the bruise forming on his cheek. The brothers turned to Lily. You going to be okay? Janner asked. This was all my fault, she said, wiping her nose with her forearm. I'm so sorry I got us into this mess. What happened back there anyway? Janner asked. While you were watching the handyball game, I was throwing a stick to Nugget near the lawn behind the crowd. A thwap plopped out of a tree right in front of him, and Nugget ran after it. I followed them, and before I knew it, I was all the way back here on Main Street. I saw the Nugget chase the thwap into the alley, and when he turned the corner, he tripped the Fang. Slarb? Tink asked. Yes, I think so. And that thing, Slarb, picked up Nugget and was about to bite him, so I kicked it in the shin, Lily said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You kicked a Fang? Both boys repeated. Well, what was I supposed to do? I don't know, but that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Jenner said. And the bravest, Tink said. Lily sat with her head down and her long hair almost touching the dirty floor. And the bravest, Jenner agreed after a moment. Lily sniffed and wiped her nose. Hush, Tink said with a hand on her back. It wasn't your fault anyways. It was that dog of yours, he said, trying to be funny. But Tink regretted it as soon as it came out of his mouth. Lily sobbed. It's not like him to run away like that, she said, and buried her face into Tink's chest. What if one of those awful things kicked him over the cliff? Listen, Janner said, be glad that Nugget isn't in here with us. We're the ones who are in trouble. Either we're about to have the snot beat out of us, or we're going to be shipped away to Dang. I'd rather not see Dang or the Castle Throg or Nag the Nameless this week, so let's hope for torture. When the door to their cell opened, in wobbled Commander Norm with Slarb at his side. I know, they're so cute. Janner, Tink, and Lily stood and stiffened as Norm regarded them with his greenish scaly arms folded and resting on his large gut like they were resting on a table. He looked them over with black, droopy eyes. Yes, Commander, Slarb said. These are the ones. And these children somehow left you unconscious in an alley? Norm turned to Slarb with a sneer. They must be valiant warriors indeed to best two armed fangs of Dang, he said, his voice deep and wet, sounding like bubbling mud, Janner thought. Well, sir, it would seem that you are curiously incompetent if it takes 5 of you to bring in 3 children. I sit on my green rump all day, growing fatter with every rat I gobble, and I believe I could whip this rabble with my eyes closed. You do have fangs, don't you, Slarb, you tadpole? And you say these stones came from nowhere, do you? A little rock hits your skull and you sleep like babies in the dirt. Did some old mammy come tuck you in? Slarb tried again and again to interject, but Norm gained momentum as he spoke until Slarb stood silent, his pale green cheeks puffing. Norm had his hand on the hilt of his dagger, itching for an excuse to draw and bury it in Slarb's full belly. Slarb gave him no opportunity, however. I beg pardon, Commander. My incompetence is inexcusable, Slarb said with his head bowed low. Norm grunted, satisfied with groveling. He turned to go with a snort, unaware that Slarb bared his fangs at his back. What about the children, sir? The fat Fang stopped in the doorway and looked over his shoulder at the Igby children on the floor of the cell. He considered them for a moment with his droopy black eyes. What would you like to do with them? Slarb grinned maliciously. Commander, if it would please you, I'd like to torture them. With whips, perhaps? Janner's heart pounded. Tink squeezed Lily tighter. Would you now? Norm said coldly. In that case, don't touch 'em. If you tried to whip 'em, they'd probably best you anyway. We'll have them sent to Dang tonight. He laughed as he turned away. Send a crow for the carriage. Chapter 12. Not the same as ships and sharks. The door closed with a thud, and Janner felt his heart drop like a stone over the cliffs and into the sea. Suddenly, a growl filled the air. Slarb arched his back and opened his jaws impossibly wide, baring his fangs and clenching his fists. Janner could see the pinkish muscles in Slarb's mouth, the black, moist tongue wriggling about like a worm, and worst of all, those yellow, dripping fangs. He shuddered at the thought of those venomous teeth biting into his skin, of those clawed hands tearing into his flesh. It was easy to see why it was said that no Fang had ever been killed by a human. Black carriage or not, any fate seemed better to Janner than dying at the hands of Slarb. Right, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, y'all are insane. The Fang strode over to the ring of keys, panting, a bit of venomous drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. He ripped the ring from the wall, strode to the cell door, and jammed a key in the lock, infuriated when the first key didn't work. Tink and Janner slid Lily into the back corner of the cell, then stood in front of her, wondering what they could possibly do other than grit their teeth and fight with all that was in them with this maddened Fang when this maddened Fang burst through the cell door. But Slarb never opened the cell. The door behind him opened, and the burly Fang called Brack lumbered in. Hello, Slarby. Slarb straightened quickly and turned around, hiding the ring of keys behind his back. Brack, he said. I told you not to call me that. So we get to deport him, eh? Brack said with a hint of glee. I love watching him wriggle when we put him in the carriage. Don't you, Slarby? Slarb was straining to speak in a level voice. Yes. Deporting them all. He wiped the drool from his mouth as his form and casually hung the keys back on the wall. It's probably worse for them in the long run, anyways, he said with a wicked grin, turning his black eyes on the children. Much worse in the long run. The two Fangs left the room. Janner and Tink collapsed to the floor beside Lily. We have to figure a way out of this, Janner said, trying again to sound older than he was. If there's anything Poto taught me, it's that there's always a way out. But that's Grandpa, a one-legged man playing ships and sharks with little kids, Tink said. This isn't a game. I know it's no game, Tink, but it won't do any good to argue with someone bigger than you. Janner punched Tink's shoulder playfully. Deep down, Janner didn't have the slightest idea how they would get out of this mess, and he feared that they wouldn't. But as the oldest, he felt the need to keep up their spirits. From what he'd heard, much bigger and braver people had been forced into the black carriage, so why shouldn't they? Those bigger and braver people were never seen again, so why should they? All he knew was that it was better to be in a Fang jail cell with a little bit of hope than without it. Lily fell asleep with her head on Tink's lap, and before long, Tink drifted off too. Janner paced the cell for hours, wondering what Poto and Neo were doing. By now they had to know the children were missing, and they likely knew from the townspeople that the children were in the jail. He pulled himself up by the bars in the high window, but it faced the shadowy rear of the jail. There was nothing to see. The cell door was locked fast and the keys were unreachable. There was nothing to do but wait. Tink was right. This wasn't ships and sharks. Maybe there wouldn't be a way out. Janner wished he could sleep like Tink and Lily, but his anxious thoughts kept him from it. He tried to think about anything but the dreaded black carriage that was making its way over the dark hill and starlit vale to Glipwood. He tried to think about... He thought about how fine his breakfast had been that very morning, and how warm the hearth was in the Igby cottage, nestled beneath the boughs of Glipwood trees. His heart was sad for Poto, his dear scruffy grandfather who had lost his wife in the Great War. He was sad for his mother, whom the Great War had widowed. Now they would again be bereaved, all because he had failed to keep a close eye on his little sister. Janner sighed and leaned against the wall with his head hung low, thinking of his father. He wished more than ever that he was sailing on a boat on the open sea, and thought to take his father's drawing out again before he realized that there would be no way to see it in the dark. Surely his father would know how to escape from this dreary cell. And the terrible ride in the black carriage, or if he were still alive, surely he would come to their rescue. But young Janner Igby had no father, and very little hope, there with his brother and sister in that bare, awful cell. Lily lifted her head and looked up at the window. Did you hear that? She said. Tink woke up with a start and said, Pass the gravy. I think it's Nugget, she said. Nugget, is that you, boy? I know. Literally. It's so sad. Three pairs of eyes turned up to the window. The children listened. They heard a whine and a worried sound somewhere between a bark and a howl. Jenner felt happy, though he didn't know why. There wasn't much a dog could do for them in their predicament, but knowing that Nugget had come back, hoping easier. Then they heard Fang voices arguing in the outer room of the cell. One of the voices, maybe slow, cut short by a thud and a crash. Commander Norm growled something about obeying orders. Then footsteps clunked towards the door. The door creaked open to reveal Norm's chubby silhouette. Jenna could see Slarb sprawled on the floor behind him. For the second time that day, because of the Igby children, Slarb's head had found itself in the path of a blunt object. Norm took the keys off the wall and unlocked the cell door. You're most fortunate, children, he gurgled. Someone thinks you're worth a few shinies. He wriggled his pudgy fingers at them. They were studded with 4 golden and bejeweled rings that hadn't been there before. Glittering bracelets covered his forearms, and a gold medallion on a silver chain hung around his neck. The jewelry looked out of place on such an ugly creature. Norm swung open the door and waved out the children. So, we can go? Janner asked timidly. Yes, out of my sight, he said impatiently. Norm admired his new jewelry while the children eased by, but as Janner passed him, the Fang snatched him by the face and jerked him close. The Fang's baggy face filled Janner's vision. He saw his terrified reflection in the black, bottomless pools of the Fang's hateful eyes, felt his claws digging into his cheeks. Touch one of my soldiers again, and 1,000 chests of gold won't save you or your family, Norm said in a low, menacing voice. He thrust Janner away so violently that he fell to the floor. Tink helped him up, not daring to look at the Fang or breathe a word. The boys helped Lily past the soldiers, past Slarb, who by now had picked himself up off the floor and was seething with anger as he watched the children leave unscathed. In the faint lamplight in the middle of the street stood their mother, Nia, whose face was as pale as a moon. This one's kind of long, but okay, I'll read it. A Song for the Shining Isle. Janner, Tink, and Lily stepped down the wooden steps to the dusty road, looking carefully sideways at the Fangs who lurked on the porch. Janner could hardly believe they were free. Was this a trick of some kind? Commander Norm waddled out and plopped down in the chair on the porch, still admiring the jewels shining on his hand. Lily between them, the boys walked slowly to their mother, whose eyes were brimming with tears. Let's go home, she said with a strong voice as she put her arms around her children and turned carefully away from the Fangs. They moved down the street in silence as if they had stumbled upon a sleeping dragon and were loath to disturb it. Janner wanted to run, to get as far away from the Fangs and the jail as fast as he could. All the children felt that way, but Nia sensed it and held them back. She walked her children through the empty thoroughfare of Glipwood, with her back straight and her chin thrust out. Quiet laughter drifted from the only inn. The lampposts flickered yellow, and the wind whipped up swirls of dust like ghosts in the moonlight. When they were well up the road and out of sight, Nia spoke first. I don't know what I would have done without you. At the sound of her voice, Janner felt a rush of relief, as if he'd been holding his breath under water and his mother had just pulled him to the surface. I just don't know what I would have done, she repeated. She knelt down, gathering them to her and hugging them tightly. I can't read today. Lily looked up to see Nugget racing towards her. He was on her in a flash, whining and ferociously wagging his tail, licking not just Lily, but each of them wherever he could find exposed skin. Lily laughed and tumbled backwards as she squeezed Nugget's neck. Where were you, boy? She said, rubbing his neck and the sides of his face. Why did you leave us like that? We looked for you at the cliffs, Nia said. Your grandfather and I were worried, but there were so many people there. We waited until after the dragon song and the crowd had mostly gone, but we still couldn't find you. We rushed back home, thinking that maybe we'd just missed you. Nia bent down to the little black dog in Lily's arms. That's when little Nugget here found us. He led me to the jail. She scratched behind Nugget's ears. I made your grandfather stay home. He would have torn the jail to pieces and fought an army of Fangs to bring you home, but it would have just gotten us all killed, so I came alone. Where did those jewels come from? Janner asked. The ones in Norm's hand. Nia looked back towards the jail. They were stored away in case of an emergency, she said simply. She looked Janner in the eye. This was an emergency. But where did you get them? Tink asked. That was a lot of gold. Nia sighed. From your father. Nia turned to Janner, clearly wanting to change the subject. Your cheek. She touched the bruised and bloodied spot. Did they hit you? Janner nodded. Nia tilted Janner's head towards the light for a better look, then kissed his cheek. Janner grimaced and wriggled away, though secretly he enjoyed the warm feeling it gave him. He wanted to ask more questions about the jewels that came from his father, but his mother had already turned away. And you, sweetie? Nia asked. Lily? I'm okay, Mama. Nugget was lying on his back in the dust with his tongue lolling out while Lily rubbed his belly. Tink showed his mother the lump on his head and she winced for him and kissed it. Did you see the dragons? Did you see how they stopped and listened when Lily started singing? Janner asked. Nia looked startled, but she collected herself quickly. That was you, dear? Yes, ma'am. Nia smiled down at Lily and put a hand on her hair. It was beautiful. But why would the dragons do that? Janner asked. Nia's answer was a shrug. And why wouldn't Norm have just taken the jewels and killed us anyways? He felt like every question led to another, and his head was swimming. Nia took Janner's shoulders in her hands and looked him square in the face. Because I told him I could cook the finest maggot loaf in the 4 seas, and that if he let you go, I'd cook it for him every 3rd day of the week. Once the meat had plenty of time to fester, I told him I had a secret recipe that involved hog pig sweat. The gold was just to get his attention, you see. Fangs have a weakness for jewelry. This note is funny. It says, the women of Scree had a similar weakness for jewelry, but they were less inclined to kill one another for it. You know how to cook maggot loaf, Tink said. I have no idea. I suppose I'd better learn, she said, smiling. Now, enough questions for you 3. Janner, what happened to your neck? She turned him again into the lamplight to see the bright red splotch on his neck where Slarb's venom had dripped on him. Fang venom, from the one called Slarb, he said, touching his neck with the tips of his fingers, the one that attacked Lily. So that's what happened, Nia said. Why'd he attack you? Nia put an arm around her crippled daughter, who recounted the events with Janner and Tink adding bits as the Igabys continued up the lane. Nia listened until Janner told about the two rocks that struck the Fang in the alley. She stopped walking. And you saw no one. No sign of who might have thrown the rocks. No one. Janner looked puzzled. He saw his mother's brow crease as they continued walking. His head buzzed with questions. Where had she hidden all those jewels? Enough to buy half the town of Glipwood. And why did she keep the secret from the family all these years? Couldn't they have used just a bit of it to make their lives a little easier? Janner had never seen so much gold in one place, and the thought that they had been in his family all these years made him, what, angry? Thankful? Janner didn't know what to feel, as if his insides were as clumsy as his outsides. All that gold, all those precious stones, gone. No, not gone, adorning Commander Norm's fingers and wrists. Janner wondered what their family needed and didn't have, and was humbled to realize that there was nothing. He had to admit to himself that his mother and Poto had provided all that they needed. The jewels wouldn't have changed a thing, except that without them, Janner would still be sitting in that jail cell with his siblings. Still, he thought with a sideways glance at his mother, what else is she hiding? But his tumble, a lot, Janner, oh, a lot. But his tumble of thoughts was interrupted by the sound of someone singing. On the lawn in front of Charney Barmingston's cottage, a small fire was burning. Several people lounged around it listening to Armlin the bard sing. The orange glow of the fire lit his face and cast a large shadow on the house behind him. Armlin was singing a song of Anira, and his eyes seemed to glow with their own light as he looked out past the dark around him. It was as though he could see before him the fair island itself with its kingdoms of sailors and poets, its high green mountains and shaded vales, the bright city where a good king once reigned, and the people sang in the fields while they gathered in the harvest. Somehow, Janner felt that it was more than just a song. Armelin had put his secret dreams to the music. Janner felt pulled to those mountains, and he saw it in the faces around the campfire, too. The song ended, and for a moment before the applause, the small gathering of listeners was silent. Janner looked up to see that his mother's face was wet with tears, and that she, like the bard, was staring into the distance. Oh, hi. Why are you crying? He asked, squeezing her hand. Nia jumped a little, like he'd just woken her from a nap. She smiled down at him. It's nothing, child. And why are you crying? Janner hadn't realized it, but his cheeks were wet as well. There's just something about the way he sings. It makes me think of when it snows outside and the fire is warm, and Poto is telling us a story while you're cooking, and there's no place I'd rather be, but for some reason I still feel homesick. Janner looked down, embarrassed. I know. Tink and Lily were silent, for Janner had spoken their thoughts as well. Armelin, still barefoot, was shaking hands and shyly nodding his head in reply to people's compliments. He picked up his whistle harp and bid them farewell, walking towards Janner and his family. Nia sucked in a breath of air and quickly bustled the children on down the shadowy lane. Mama, can't we meet him? Tink asked, looking over his shoulder at Armelin, who was making his way directly towards them. No, it's time we got home. Papa will be worried sick. Mama, please, Lily said. I said no. Nia picked up the pace. Lily, even with Nia's hand on her arm, lost her footing and fell to the ground. Nia stopped to help her up, apologizing while she brushed the dirt from Lily's dress. I like your dog, a kind raspy voice said from behind them. The children froze. Nia stopped brushing Lily's dress and straightened. She worked her way around to face the silhouette of Armelin the bard. He was bent over, patting Nugget on the head. Janner and Tink were speechless. Thank you. His name's Nugget, Lily said as she scooted over to where Nugget was wagging his tail. She peered up at the dim silhouette of the bard. I like your singing. Why, thank you, little princess, Armelin said, squatting down in front of her. Nia was still strangely silent, standing a little ways back from them. Armelin held out his hand to Lily. My name is Armelin. I don't like it here, he said with a smile that Janner could barely see in the dark. Lily smiled back at him, unfazed by the strange remark. My name's Lily. I can't walk very well. At her name, Armelin's smile faded and he leaned in a little closer to better see her face. He looked up at Nia and the boys who still hadn't moved. And who might you kind people be? Our name is Igby, Nia said stiffly. She stepped quickly to Lily and pulled her away from the bard. We wish you a good evening, she said. She led the children once again towards home, leaving Armelin standing in the middle of the road, staring inquisitively after them. When they approached the warm cottage nestled among the trees, they could see lamps burning in the windows. Fireflies flickered in the night air, and Danny the cart horse snorted in the pasture. Turner felt another rush of gladness that he wasn't dead, or worse, trapped in the black carriage. Before they reached the door, it flew open wide. Poto's tall, one-legged form filled the doorway. He had a stout club in one hand and brandished a wooden spoon in the other. Where in all the great good goblin world have you been? Out tramping the frolicky hillsides while I've been in here gnawing on my gums. You must march your soggy feet over here before I yank out your innards and stew 'em in a. The grandfather's torrent lasted at least 2 minutes and would have gone on much longer, but the children broke free from Nia and tackled their big man with hugs. His club and deadly spoon dropped to the floor, and he nearly toppled over. But years of practice with one leg had made Poto Helmer quite agile. In a moment, he had Tink in a headlock and was poking his ribs. Yep. In a moment, he had Tink in a headlock and was poking his ribs with one of his gnarled, calloused fingers, while Janer and Lily tried to wrestle him to the ground. Finally, he gave in and toppled backward dramatically, howling all the while about rotten children and their disrespect of their elders. They tumbled about on the floor by the light of the crackling fire in the hearth until the match ended and the old man stood up with a groan. Out of breath and sweating, he beamed down at them and pushed a wild lock of long white hair out of his eyes. You'll be wanting some of my cheesy chowder and butter bread, won't you, my little warriors? He said, panting. It's been simmering all evening, along with 1,000 prayers that you'd make it back to your Poto safe and uneaten. At the mention of food, Tink moaned with pleasure and disappeared into the kitchen, rubbing his stomach. Poto hoisted Lily onto his back and carried her. Lost your wee crutch, eh? We'll make you up another in the bright morning, he said, as the kitchen door swung shut behind him. Janner watched Nia wearily close and barred the front door. She bowed her head and whispered a prayer of thanksgiving. I love you, Ma, Janner said, pushing down the lump in his throat. I'm sorry I lost her. Shh, it's all right, Nia said. You did well, son. And with a weary smile, she ushered him into the kitchen. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, that was a lot. I don't remember the first book being so violent. I think, like I was saying, they changed it so much in the show that I don't even remember if they go to the. Why can't I remember them going to the jail in the first season? It's crazy because like I'm reading this and it's like I feel like every scene is. I kind of wish that it was exactly like this in the show because I especially love how like I love all the Kalmar and Lily moments too in these chapters. I think like I made a video about it, but they're so protective of each other, and I think even in the first book it shows that. So I think I think there is a jail scene, but it's different. I don't think it's like the same. It's pretty different, but yeah, I know. I literally like I was okay, the show is so good, but I have to say it's not. I don't want to say it was disappointing. It wasn't disappointing. It was just I was just hoping it would be more like the books, if that makes sense. And they're doing a good job so far in season 2. Yeah, it's when the whole family goes. They don't have this part. Again, they wanted to make it less violent for kids, but in my opinion, just make it for middle schoolers and high schoolers and more, I feel like. But yeah, I think it's I love the chapters, and I the reason I don't remember when they're literally getting abused and literally Janner gets punched in the face and Kalmar gets cracked in the head and Lily's gets her hair yanked forward. I don't remember that because none of that is in the books. I think like I was talking about in my last live, all that happened was like no, I do love the show. But I feel like all I remember in the show happening was Kalmar takes like a piece of Lily's crutch and hits it at the wall, and then the stones fall. But in this one, obviously, we know. Yeah, in the books, we obviously know Artham is the one who throws the stone, and I was really, 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 really hoping they kept that in there because I think it's so like I love the mysteriousness of the books. I think we get it so much more. Like there's so much foreshadowing in the books that we don't get in the show. Like Nia like not wanting to talk to Armelin the Bard, and then Armelin when he's literally like Lily says her name and he's like, wait a second. And then Nia is like, oh well, we gotta go now, bye. And it's like, I like it's so fun when you've already read, like you already know who they are and you've already read all the way through book 4, and then you read book 1 again and you notice how uptight Nia was for nobody to find out who they were. And I think like she knew it was Artham, I think, who threw the stones. So I love the little Easter eggs they put in there. It's my favorite thing. So I love the first book and I forget how good it is. It's slow, but it's so good. I love it. Anyways, so yeah. This has been a lot of fun reading it. I love um it makes me so sad for all of them. They get abused so much more in the books, I feel like. But yeah, I love the Kalmar and Lily moments that we don't get a lot. So I think we still get them, just not as much. Yeah, like he would know them. Oh my goodness. I was creeped out by him when I first read the series. I remember thinking like, why is he so weird? Like, I don't know. I know he's a good guy, but I used to think he was weird with Lily. I was like, what's what's your prerogative? I think he definitely suspected that they were special, but he's always creeped me out. I don't know. I think the way he talks and the way he's like, "Nah, hey, little princess." I mean, I guess she is a princess, but still, it still freaked me out. No, literally, I was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? I love like, oh my gosh, I love how he's so confused and he doesn't know what's going on. He's like, why are you acting so weird, Ma? And then she's like, oh, I got them from your father. She never lies. I've noticed that she never lies. Whenever you're like hearing, like in especially in this context, literally like whenever I read in the context of knowing who they are, Nia never lies. I feel like she always gives them just half of the truth. She's like, "Oh, I got them from your father." It's like, I mean, she technically did, but she won't give any context clues. She just is like, "Oh, yeah." Anyways, Nia's also a lot blunter in the books, I feel like, but oh my goodness, my one of my favorite Nia moments in the show though is when they're in, oh, I forget. It might be in Ankle Jelly Manor, and Oscar is like about to say one of his quotes. He's like, "In the words," and Nia goes, "I don't care." The way I laughed, but yeah. So I'm so excited. I wonder how far we actually are. We're already that far, so we've read quite a bit in just a few days. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for watching. We will read tomorrow. I'm trying to get back on a schedule. I don't know if I'm gonna have school tomorrow or not, but we'll see. And tomorrow we're starting on Secrets and Cheesy Chowder tomorrow. We'll read 14 through, oh, that's a short chapter. 14 to 16. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I will, again, another live is coming tomorrow, and I'll see you guys later. Love you. Bye.